I'm King Link, and today we're going to be doing a design review for Streets of Rage 4. Now, I want to do something a little bit different this week. Normally, I go over a game and tell you what I like and don't like, and don't worry, we will definitely get to that, but Streets of Rage 4 was a challenging game to cover. Now, when I play most games, I try to think up interesting topics as I play for the videos, and there are times like The Crew 2 or Mortal Kombat 11 where I feel like I don't get enough content, or really want to rant about what I'm thinking, such as microtransactions and grind that both of those games have. Well, I did a video about these topics a long time ago, and I should cover them again. It's just not exciting. I think everyone's on the same side there. So when I started Streets of Rage 4, I thought of a very specific question I wanted to answer, but before we get there, let me roll back in time a bit. Now, I grew up in the arcades in the 80s and 90s. I would often see games like, well, this, Double Dragon the arcade machine, and it's important in its relation to Streets of Rage 4. I would go to the arcade, pump quarter after quarter into Double Dragon's arcade machine. This was the hot game at one point, and it absolutely ate quarters. But there are games I loved in the arcades, like Metal Slug is also one I'm thrilled to play on PC because I love this series in the arcades. The art is so freaking good, the gameplay is fun, the ability to drive the tank is amazing, and the major enemy design is perfect. So playing it now is a true joy, or so I thought. Now after playing Metal Slug X, even 2 and 3, I didn't have a ton of fun and I kind of wondered why. I remember these games fondly, and there's something that doesn't work while playing these games as an adult, which meant it wasn't as fun. I kind of assumed any game of the same vein would have similar problems. I actually was playing Raiden Legacy for the humble choice recently. Same problem. It's a fun game for about an hour, and that's about it. So picking up Streets of Rage 4, which people were loving, gave me two possibilities. I could enjoy Streets of Rage 4, or I might hate it, and either way, I was hoping to talk about what made Streets of Rage 4 work or not work, where so many old arcade games have definitely failed. The answer to this is simple, though. When you die in Streets of Rage 4 and have to continue, you start at the beginning of the level, so you can't just pop another quarter into the game and get more lives. Now this is relatively simple game design. When there's no penalty to continuing the game loses its meaning to difficulty or gameplay. Think about how trivial Dark Souls would be if you could just instantly stand up each time you get a game over and continue the fight. I dare anyone to make that game and try to make it as popular as Dark Souls. It's impossible. In the arcade, you had a finite amount of quarters though, so deaths were meaningful because you wanted to maximize the time playing arcade games with those quarters, or the quality of the games you played. But as a home consumer, you can just infinitely continue your way through these games. And Streets of Rage 4? No. You're going to have to earn your wins, and if you can't beat a level in a single continue, get better. And just this one change makes Streets of Rage 4 infinitely better than most arcade games on PC. Now, this isn't some new game design, of course. Ikaruga actually shows us how continues can work in the modern era. Ikaruga is a tough-as-nails shooter which has players changing the polarity of their ships to absorb bullets, and it's a bullet hell game. In Ikaruga, you start with 3 continues possible, and every hour of playing Ikaruga, you get more continues until you get 9 total continues in 6 hours, and then you get infinite continues in the 7th hour. Players will get better over those 7 hours, but it's a great experience. At least that was how it worked on the original releases on console. The Steam release, though, it appears you get infinite continues right out of the box, which kind of ruins the progression. Rather than earning the right to beat the game through skill or time spent, you can just beat the game in about 15 minutes now. I honestly wish they kept the original unlock scheme as well. So continues need a matter in arcade games, and that's why I like Streets of Rage more than all those other arcade games. Is that all I have? Well, no, let's go back to that first arcade game I showed. It's the most similar to Streets of Rage 4. It's a beat-em-up called Double Dragon. This version has limited continues, difficulty selectors, and it's a classic game. So what's wrong here? Well, let me get one point out of the way. The controls are a little bit janky on Double Dragon Trilogy. I can't recommend this version just because of that, and it's also decently hard because, well, the arcade games were intended as a quarter gobbler, and this version is as well. So let's take a more modern take on that series. Double Dragon Neon. Now this was released at the end of the Xbox 360's console's lifespan. There's no control issues with this game, and honestly, I do think Double Dragon Neon is a rather fun game at times. But it's not as good as Streets of Rage 4, and as I played both games, I didn't have an exact answer why. I would argue the level up system with the tapes is still better than Streets of Rage 4, but I didn't have as much fun with this one, and to be honest, I had played this before Streets of Rage 4, so which one I played first doesn't matter. And just to round out the comparison, the newest Double Dragon game, Double Dragon 4, has some similar issues. It has instant death pits, which honestly I think ruins almost any game they're in, limited continues, and the classic style of the game, including the classic fighting style. Yet with Double Dragon 4, the entire game feels like it wants you to spam the most powerful move over and over. I don't think it's a great game. Alright, so I think we now have a question. What made me enjoy Streets of Rage 4 as a better beat-em-up than any of the Double Dragon games? I spent a couple nights of thought on this. I'd like to take you on that journey rather than just give you the answer. So originally I had some thoughts about what made Streets of Rage 4 amazing. The combat has to be better, of course. The music is fantastic, the different characters are great, the continue system is far better, and the bosses are just amazing, right? Well, I started to think about this while I played the second level of the game, so I wasn't that far into it. One of the reasons I was thinking at this point was I was having a good time playing Streets of Rage 4, and I didn't have as much fun playing Double Dragon. Now, there is a part of each of those subjects that are true, but the more I thought about this topic, the more I realized there's still a problem. So, let me go through each of these topics quickly, and starting with the combat. I actually do like the combat in Streets of Rage 4, but it is a bit simplistic. I don't like the special move button in general, as it risks life for damage, and I usually fail that. So, mostly attack, jump, and dodge are my standards, along with grapple, of course. But most of the interesting special enemies that the game has, especially the ones who have non-standard attack patterns, come in later levels, like the shielded enemy here from the second level. If these enemies are the reason I love the game, well, what made me love the original level? This is going to be an important key to this. I actually enjoyed Streets of Rage from the first moment till I beat the final boss and beyond. So after really thinking about it, I have to be honest here. I think Double Dragon Neon and Double Dragon 4 have better combat systems. Having just a punch and a kick button is a huge improvement. There's different combos, special moves, running, spin kicks, all that stuff. And that should have made the combat system better, so it's probably not that. So it's gotta be the music, right? I mean, it's Streets of Rage, they have an amazing soundtrack, and yes, I'll layer some music in here, hopefully it doesn't hurt me, and just the opening soundtrack is so good. I mean, the music here is incredible during the whole game, and it sets the mood. But if that's the answer, if I mute the audio, I'm gonna have a lot less fun. And I'll admit, muting the audio does detract a little bit from the experience, but really, it's not the music. It adds to the experience, but there's something more important here. So it's gotta be the characters, right? They're all different, they all have their own style, and I'll be honest, I really like that fact. The fact that you have a ton of different characters here and each one feels different is a great feature for Streets of Rage 4, which is why I'm showing different characters throughout this video. It's probably one of the better features of the game in general. And it reminds me of Final Fight and playing as Haggard instead of Guy or Cody. I don't care what anyone says, I'll always pronounce him as Guy in Final Fight. But I enjoyed Streets of Rage 4 from the first level on my first time through, so I don't see how it could really be the different characters that matter if I was enjoying myself in the gameplay. So no, of course, it's not the characters itself. I've already made a big deal about the continue system on this video, so that's gotta be it. And yes, the continue system is excellent in Streets of Rage 4, but I actually didn't lose all my lives in the first level, so it's probably not that. And in addition, the challenge of the game is good, but it's nothing exceptional at that point. Also, Double Dragon Neon actually pulls the same shtick of restarting a level when you die, so if I didn't like Double Dragon Neon, it can't be that. So it's gotta be the bosses, right? Well, let me start by saying, yes, it's kind of the bosses. The bosses do matter, and they are amazing in Streets of Rage 4. At least to the point that Double Dragon 4 actually has almost no boss fights worth mentioning, unless you count these guys who get killed in a couple seconds. Double Dragon Neon uses the same boss multiple times. Double Dragon Trilogy only has a boss at the end of the game. Problem solved, except, okay, I was enjoying myself before the bosses. So let's get one more topic out of the way, graphics. Now, I love the graphics of Streets of Rage 4. I think the backgrounds are amazing, the detail in the characters are great, the animations are well made. I will often say graphics don't matter in games, but if I'm honest, this game would not be as good if it looked like Double Dragon 4. I love the pain animations alone. So try to look at those while I'm fighting. But to slightly disprove this, I'll reference Double Dragon Neon again, which looked almost as good. Streets of Rage does look better. Now, at this point, some viewers are going to be shouting, it's the entire package, it's all these reasons, and I'll be honest, I was almost ready to accept that Streets of Rage 4 is just a better game than Double Dragon for all these reasons, and I was going to call it a day. But that wasn't enough for me. I like to understand why I like games, and to me, it's more important. It's important as a reviewer to be able to correctly identify what makes you like a game rather than just a blanket, this feels good. You can say that you feel like Batman or you feel like Spider-Man, but what makes you feel like Batman or Spider-Man is so much more important as a reviewer. You might also think this is probably just a Streets of Rage as a franchise I love. It might also be possible, but the problem with that suggestion is that I don't think I've ever fully played through a Streets of Rage game before this. So let's fix that. I actually have this Sega Genesis collection. Let's boot up Streets of Rage 1. And this is oh god. I think I'm going to have to anger some Streets of Rage fans, aren't I? I'm not a fan of Streets of Rage 1. It's a good game, but I don't think it's a masterpiece people make it out to be. At least not in 2020. Nostalgia probably adds a lot to this for fans, and most people talk about playing through the entire game with friends and all. Okay, it's a good game, but I really don't like this one, though I do like the bosses. I wonder if there's a clue in that. Let's try the sequel, though, Streets of Rage 2, and oh my god, my childhood was awful since I never had this game. Streets of Rage 2 is freaking amazing, and I love this game from the first moment to the end again. The graphics are great, the music is killer, and the game is so much fun. I love beating up all the enemies and just going to town. Streets of Rage is awesome! Wait, didn't I just say Streets of Rage 1 isn't good? Well, okay, this was my eureka moment. I love Streets of Rage 2, but only liked Streets of Rage 1. What's different? Well, let's take a look at my actual childhood. That's right, if I was an arcade kid and didn't play Streets of Rage, I had to play something else, and that something else was this, Final Fight. And I had to know if Final Fight is still amazing. So I actually grabbed the Capcom Beat 'em Up collection, and sure enough, Final Fight is still awesome. I mean, I can't express how much fun this game is to me, and it's a worthy experience that is still enjoyable. So I think we have enough evidence. If you want to try to guess, you can of course pause the video and answer down in the comments. But what do you think Final Fight, Streets of Rage 2, and Streets of Rage 4 have that Double Dragon Trilogy, Double Dragon Neon, and Double Dragon 4 does not have? And let me give a more specific question, because this is how I kind of got the answer. Why did I enjoy the bosses in Streets of Rage 1, but I didn't enjoy the stages as much? Now hopefully you figured it out, but the answer that I found was it's the enemy's life bar. You probably will say it, and I'll say it myself. That is a dumb answer. And yet, is it possible? So I kind of had to prove this conclusively to myself so I could make this video. Could the enemy's life bar be an important difference in my enjoyment of these games? I didn't want to say it if I couldn't just prove it because it sounds ludicrous. There had to be a way. Well, the answer is there was a way. We'll go as low tech as possible to prove this. While playing Final Fight, I actually found a Jack-in-the-Box coupon sheet, put it on the screen to cover the enemy's life bar, and sure enough, I actually started having less fun with the game. And then I went on to Streets of Rage 4, coupon sheet in the same place, playing the same game I actually loved before, and sure enough, I wasn't having the same amount of fun on that first stage. So that confirmed it for me, but I liked the enemy's life bar. Why? Well, let's look at Double Dragon again. As I beat up enemies, how much life do they have left? Or better yet, how much life do I have? I have some number of cubes, and how much each attack takes off when I get hit is unknown. You know, there's probably a guide somewhere online to get that information, but why? Why are they hiding that information? Now, as I play Streets of Rage 4 again, we know exactly how much damage my attacks are doing because we can see the enemy's life going down. There's a ton of value in that, and I can judge my attacks, my damage, which enemies might be easier to kill, or who I should be focusing on. You can have enemies with different amounts of HP, and there's an absolute boatload of information on how I should be approaching the enemies from just this one feature. And I can tell you, as I play Streets of Rage, I do notice that when I'm executing a combo and it can take my eyes off my character, I feel my eyes going to that upper left part of the screen. And developers actually do understand the importance of a UI so much that they actually playtest games, and they do track the position of players' hands on the controller, not just which buttons are pressed, as well as the game screen, but they'll also try to record the eye movement of players because it's incredibly useful to developers to know which elements of the screen players are looking at or darting towards, maybe perhaps need to be made bigger so that they can see. As a designer, though, it's also important to give the players the right information to make important decisions in the game, and a life bar for enemies, if well designed, is a valuable tool for that. It might not seem important, but it is. There are a ton of ways to implement this as well, whether it be like heavy breathing of enemies as they stand up, blood, damage models as characters take damage, but games need the right system to deliver the right information to the players so that they can make the right decisions. I hope you've enjoyed this dissection of Streets of Rage 4 and what makes it stand out to me as a beat 'em up. I do want to say this is only my answer as to why I like Streets of Rage 4 more. Someone else could say they don't care about health bars, and that might be true. They might like Double Dragon more. That's perfectly fine, and feel free to let me know why. What I think is important, though, is how my thought process was when I was breaking down the game. I kind of wanted to bring this up though, because right now there's currently a lot of divisive discussion in the games community, and I hope I can show you that rather than assume you like something or dislike something because of whatever reason you think it is, there are ways to dig deeper and try to understand if that's what's important to your love of a specific game, genre, or experience, or your hatred of it. Understanding what matters to you is beneficial for you. If I see a beat 'em up such as another Double Dragon game in the future, I might give it a shot, but mindlessly punching on enemies might not be enough for me. On the other hand, when I was considering the takeover, I was able to ask meaningful questions of my friends about life bars and stuff like that, because I now had an understanding of what I liked in the beat 'em up genre, and it is a pretty good game. As for Streets of Rage 4, let me go over just a few more pieces. So I did show the retry screen a little bit earlier. This screen is great. Now I love the idea to give assists and the ability to change characters on a continue screen, with those assists only penalizing the player's score. I also think scores are an outdated mechanic in the video game industry, and outside of leaderboards, they aren't that important in the modern day. Yet Streets of Rage 4 actually has a great combo system for that score system and gives free lives if players rack up enough points. It actually made the scores worth something more than just a leaderboard slot. Lives as well feel a bit outdated today, but they work perfectly with Streets of Rage, and I don't think Streets of Rage 4 would be as good without the life systems, even if you add that to the end of their health bar. And finally, as for the purpose of the score, another thing they use it for is adding to existing tally of all your scores in the game, and at certain milestones you actually earn new characters with a massive 8 bonus characters in this game from previous games that will get unlocked. Though I would love to have seen Rue return, he's only in a small cameo. Boo. It's another way to make scores meaningful, but I would say it takes too long to earn the first unlockable. It's good otherwise. Overall, though, Streets of Rage 4 is an amazing game. I've enjoyed my time with it, and it's only made me appreciate the beat-em-up genre more. I honestly have fallen pretty hard for Streets of Rage 4 and the Streets of Rage franchise. I can't wait to see if we get a Streets of Rage 5. Hopefully, it doesn't take another 26-year gap between the two. But I think positive reception of this game should mean we'll see another before long. And that's what I think of Streets of Rage 4. Honestly, there have been some major technical issues with this game. It crashes well in big picture mode for me, and even wiped my save game when it does that. Yet, I still keep coming back and playing it. That's actually a sign that they've done something right to make me keep returning even with these problems. Overall, though, I like this game and I recommend it to everyone. So how's everyone else enjoying Streets of Rage 4? Do you think I'm right on the health bar being an important part of the beat-em-up genre, or am I just blowing smoke? We'll also have the Humble Choice review before long. Thanks for watching. If this has actually made you think, I'm glad, and I hope this will at least make you consider what you love about other games or genres. If you think this earned your subscription, great, and if you want to ring that bell too, it'd be super awesome. If not, I understand. Thank you for giving me a shot. If you're interested in more from me, I'll pop up a series of short reviews from last week and some other videos, so feel free to check those out. And until then, I'm King Lincoln. Thank you for watching.